I'd like to welcome everybody here. I'm Lois Winter. I'm chairman of the York County Historical Committee. We are a group of volunteers who are appointed by the Board of Supervisors, and Veterans Day and Memorial Day are part of our mission. It's a great honor to be able to present this program for you today. We also like you to know that we also sell fact sheets books. They're outside if anybody's interested in buying one. They are history of York County, if anybody's interested in that history. It's an honor and a privilege to welcome all veterans here today, and I feel very honored to be able to thank you all for your service. Welcome.
I'm Tim Smith, also a member of the York County Historical Committee, and I would like to welcome all of you. It's nice to have you here. It's a beautiful day outside as opposed to last year when we had that storm come through and hit us. We're going to do what we've done in the past and talk about some of the letters that men wrote during the wars. And the first one was letter number 1, it's the American Revolution, 1780, Henry Johnson. I have taken this opportunity to let you know what misfortune I met on the 7th. About sunrise, we attacked them. And there were about 5,000 of them, and we kept up a hot fire for about 4 hours. And I got a wound in the head, very bad, but I'm in hopes with the assistance of God I shall get well again. And now I'd like to ask VFW Post 824 to post our colors. Everyone would stand. Ms. Peggy Turnage, if you would lead our pledge, please.
Pledge with me, please. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I think we're good.
Colors, post. See the colors. Thank you. You can all be seated. I'm going to acknowledge him more than once today, but one of the great things about being a part of this ceremony is getting to know the members of VFW Post 824 and the members of DAV Chapter 13, and we really appreciate their participation and help with this ceremony. Our second letter, War of 1812, the year of 1814. Siege of Fort Erie. The Commander-in-Chief of the British forces made the proposition that every man who would freely offer his services to go and attack the stronghold of the Yankees should receive as a compensation of his valor 1 pint of good old Jamaican rum. Accordingly, 1,500 brave men presented themselves. I'd like to recognize our guest today, Superintendent Dan Smith, Colonial National Historical Park, also a good friend. Jim McReynolds, our county administrator, Jim, and Supervisor George Rickshak and his wife here with us. Uncle Sam, who told our bell force over here, also a veteran, and I think that's it. Our next letter, the American Civil War, 1861. This is actually a local letter. July 13th, 1861, Private Thomas B. Booth, 3rd Virginia Cavalry. Last night we were roused about 3 o'clock in order to saddle our horses and get ready to march at a moment's notice. It was reported that a large force was landing at Messic's Point. It turned out to be all report. And if you're not familiar with Messic's Point, it's the tip of Poquoson. Why the Union would be interested in Messic's Point, I don't know, but that was a strategic point, one point in history. I would like to introduce our Veterans Day speaker. I met Dan a few years ago when he first came to the National Historical Park, Colonial, and Dan has seen our locality through the 225th anniversary of the American Revolution, the siege here at Yorktown, and also through the 400th anniversary of Jamestown, and coming up the 150th anniversary of the American Civil War. So he's spanned a lot of time periods. He's not that old. It's just that he's in charge of all these events, and he's bared up very well. And I'm sure we could tell a few stories about some of the things that have gone on during those events. But he's always seems like he's got everything under control and just at ease with everything. And any time you could probably see him walking his dogs down Main Street when he's not on duty somewhere. But anyway, we appreciate, Dan, your coming here. Dan is also a veteran of the U.S. Army and a veteran of Vietnam, 4th Infantry Division. And I believe you said you were part of the 4th at one time. So anyway, Dan, turn it over to you.
Tim, thank you.
Thank you.
I would only say, Tim, that looks are deceiving. It's an honor to be with you all today. As a veteran and as the son of a veteran, I try not to get emotional on this kind of a day, but if I do, it just happens, so bear with me. We're here today to honor all those who have served in the past, who are serving now, and those who gave the ultimate sacrifice in the service of their country. For the sake of everyone here, let's do a little review of what Veterans Day really is in this country and see what brings us here today and brings thousands of people in thousands of locations around this country, from Arlington National Cemetery to military installations to this same type of ceremony or parade all around this great nation. World War I, known at the time as the Great War, officially ended when the Treaty of Versailles was signed on June 28, 1919. However, fighting ceased 7 months earlier when an armistice, or temporary cessation of hostilities, between the Allied nations and Germany went into effect on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. For that reason, November 11, 1918, is generally regarded as the end of the war to end all wars. In November of 1919, President Wilson proclaimed November 11 as the first commemoration of Armistice Day with the following words: "To us in America, the reflections of Armistice Day will be filled with solemn pride in the heroism of those who died in this country's service and with gratitude for victory, both because of the thing from which it has freed us and because of the opportunity it has given America to show her sympathy with peace and justice in the councils of the nations." The original concept for the celebration was for a day observed with parades and public meetings and a brief suspension of business beginning at 11 a.m. The United States Congress officially recognized the end of World War I when it passed a concurrent resolution on June 4, 1926, with these words: "Whereas the 11th of November, 1918, marked the cessation of the most destructive and far-reaching war in human annals and the resumption by the people of the United States of peaceful relations with other nations, which we hope may never again be severed, and whereas it is fitting that the recurring anniversary of this date should be commemorated with thanksgiving and prayer and exercises designed to perpetuate peace through goodwill and mutual understanding between nations. And whereas the legislatures of 27 of our states have already declared November 11 to be a legal holiday, therefore be it resolved by the Senate and House concurring that the President of the United States is requested to issue a proclamation calling upon the officials to display the flag of the United States on all government buildings on November 11, and inviting the people of the United States to observe the day in schools and churches or other suitable places with appropriate ceremonies of friendly relations with other peoples. An act of Congress in 1938 made the 11th of November each year a legal holiday, a day to be dedicated to the cause of world peace and to be thereafter celebrated and known as Armistice Day. Armistice Day was primarily a day set aside to honor veterans of World War I, but in 1954, after World War II had required the greatest mobilization of soldiers, sailors, Marines, and airmen in the nation's history, after American forces had fought aggression in Korea, the 83rd Congress, at the urging of the veteran service organizations, amended the Act of 1938 by striking the word armistice and inserting in its place the word veterans. With the approval of this legislation, on June 1st, 1954, November 11th became a day to honor American veterans of all wars. Later that same year, on October 8th, President Dwight D. Eisenhower issued the first Veterans Day Proclamation, which stated, "In order to ensure proper and widespread observance of this anniversary, all veterans organizations, and the entire citizenry will wish to join hands in the common purpose. Toward this end, I am designating the Administrator of Veterans Affairs as chairman of a Veterans Day National Committee, which shall include such other persons as the chairman may select, and which will coordinate at the national level necessary planning for this observance. I am also requesting the heads of all departments and agencies of the executive branch of the government to assist the National Committee in every way possible." On that same day, President Eisenhower sent a letter to the Honorable Harvey V. Higley, Administrator of Veterans Affairs, designating him as chairman of the Veterans Day National Committee. And the current Secretary of Veterans Affairs carries out that same duty today. In 1958, the White House advised VA's General Counsel that the 1954 designation of the VA Administrator applied to all subsequent VA administrators. The Uniform Holiday Bill, signed in 1968, and was intended to ensure 3-day weekends for federal employees by celebrating 4 national holidays on Mondays, which included Washington's birthday, Memorial Day, Veterans Day, and Columbus Day. At the time, it was thought that these extended weekends would encourage travel, recreational and cultural activities, and stimulate greater industrial and commercial production. Many states did not agree with this decision and continued to celebrate the holidays on their regular dates, original dates. The first Veterans Day under the new law was observed with much confusion on October 25th, 1971. It was quite apparent that the commemoration of this day was a matter of historic and patriotic significance to a great number of our citizens. And so on September 20th, 1975, President Gerald R. Ford signed a public law which returned the annual observance of Veterans Day to its original date of November 11, beginning in 1978. And for all of us who lived through those years when that was changed, he did the right thing. This action supported the desires of the overwhelming majority of state legislatures, all major veterans service organizations, and the American people. Veterans Day continues to be observed on November 11, regardless of the day of the week on which it falls. The restoration of the observance of Veterans Day to November 11 not only preserves the historical significance of the date, but helps focus attention on the important purpose of Veterans Day, a celebration to honor America's veterans for their patriotism, love of country, and willingness to serve and sacrifice for the common good. As a point of personal privilege, I would say that's also why we celebrate Yorktown Day on October 19th, because of the significance of that victory here in Yorktown. It's now my honor and pleasure to read to you, following President Eisenhower's direction from 1954, the Veterans Day Proclamation by the President of the United States. On Veterans Day, we come together to pay tribute to the men and women who have worn the uniform of the United States Armed Forces. Americans across this land commemorate the patriots who have risked their lives to preserve the liberty of our nation, the families who support them, and the heroes no longer with us. It is not our weapons or our technology that make us the most advanced military in the world. It is the unparalleled spirit, skill, and devotion of our troops. As we honor our veterans with ceremonies on this day, let our actions strengthen the bond between a nation and her warriors. In an unbroken line of valor stretching across more than 2 centuries, our veterans have charged into harm's way, sometimes making the ultimate sacrifice to protect the freedoms that have blessed America. Whether active duty, reserve, or National Guard, they are our nation's finest citizens, and they have shown the heights to which Americans can rise when asked and inspired to do so. Our courageous troops in Iraq, Afghanistan, and around the globe have earned their place alongside previous generations of great Americans, serving selflessly, tour after tour, in conflicts spanning nearly a decade. Long after leaving the uniform behind, many veterans continue to serve our country as public servants and mentors, parents, and community leaders. They have added proud chapters to the story of America, not only on the battlefield, but also in communities from coast to coast. They have built and shaped our nation, and it is our solemn promise to support our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Coast Guardsmen as they return to their homes and families. America's sons and daughters have not watched over her shores or her citizens for public recognition, fanfare, or parades. They have preserved our way of life with unwavering patriotism and quiet courage, and ours is a debt of honor to care for them and their families. These obligations do not end after their time of service, and we must fulfill our sacred trust to care for our veterans after they retire their uniforms. Bear with me one moment. As a grateful nation, we are humbled by the sacrifices rendered by our service members and their families out of the deepest sense of service and love of country. On Veterans Day, let us remember our solemn obligations to our veterans and recommit in upholding the enduring principles that our country lives for and that our fellow citizens have fought and died for. With respect and in recognition of the contributions our servicemen and women have made to the cause of peace and freedom around the world, the Congress has provided that November 11 of each year shall be set aside as a legal public holiday to honor our nation's veterans. Now, therefore, I, Barack Obama, President of the United States of America, do hereby declare November 11, 2010 as Veterans Day. I encourage all Americans to recognize the valor and sacrifice of our veterans through appropriate public ceremonies and private prayers. I call upon federal, state, and local officials to display the flag of the United States and to participate in patriotic activities in their communities. I call on all Americans, including civic and fraternal organizations, places of worship, schools, and communities, to support this day with commemorative expressions and programs. In witness thereof, I have hereunto set my hand this 5th day of November in the year of our Lord 2010, and in the independence of the United States of America, the 235th. Signed, Barack Obama. By you all being here present today, you have carried out the wishes of this proclamation, and I commend all of you for being here today. Thank you.
Step back up here a moment. On behalf of the York County Historical Committee, we would like to thank you for speaking and present you with a print, and it's by your favorite framing company, too. I go in and we talk about framing all the time. Anyway, this is George Washington inspecting the French batteries at Yorktown, and Dan knows a little bit about that. And But I do a lot of research, historical research myself, and it's not what it says at the bottom is not entirely accurate. Actually, George Washington was pointing to the French to say, if you see helicopters from the British troops come in, they'll be coming from that direction. So that's the only print that's accurately describing that situation.
Tim, thank you much. And for those of you who, I knew I was going to do that, I'm the son of a 30-year Army veteran, and Dad's been gone since 1985, and I think of him every day on Veterans Day, so that's why. Thank you. Thank you, Tim.
Make sure that Diane and them include that in their interpretive trail now, that correction about the French batteries and helicopters.
Oh, no.
Well, I just got to keep the Park Service on their toes, according to the history. This time I'd like to read our next letter. A little bit about Armistice Day and what happened on November 11th for everyone doesn't understand, but World War I, all wars are unique wars, and one of the unique things about the First World War was when they came to terms that the 11th hour, the 11th day was the end of the war, most troops were ordered to continue fighting up until 11 o'clock. And if you read descriptions, the Germans sat at their machine guns and fired until the hour stopped them. And they got up and saluted the Americans and walked away. And you read those descriptions and letters continuously about the fact that the war didn't stop until 11. There was no walkaway until that time. And the next letter is talking about the very thing. First World War, letter number 4, November 11th, 1918, Sergeant Walter Lockhart. The same flares that last night would have meant we are falling back or we are advancing tonight mean the war is over, and Fritz is as happy as we are. At this time, we'd like to recognize our veterans, and we're going to ask our reenactors to step forward, and if the veterans, when they walk past you, if you get up out of your row, come up front, turn around, and face everyone else. Thank you. While being seated, I would like to recognize a couple of other people that I've spotted in the audience. Ms. Sheila Knoll, one of our supervisors here in York County. Thank you, Sheila. And Mr. Jim Funk back there with the York County Historical Museum, and also a former supervisor. Our reenactors up here, I'd like to introduce very quickly. Mr. Charles Feldhausen, who's doing our First World War impression. He's also an Army veteran. Jack Morarns is doing our Civil War impression. Jack's dad was a Marine Corps veteran. Jerry Altoff's doing our War of 1812 impression. Jerry's a veteran, U.S. Coast Guard, I believe. Is that correct? And Mike Rolla is doing our American Revolutionary War impression, and he was actually in the American Revolution. He's the last surviving. Actually, Mike is a U.S. Army veteran also, so we appreciate you. You need to make sure we get a flower to each one of these guys. Continuing on, letter number 5, World War II, 1944. Combat nurse June Wandry. A few days ago, I was giving medication before lights out. As I finished with this one very young soldier and was tucking his blankets around him, he said, "My mother always kissed me goodnight when she tucked me in." So I kissed him on the forehead. He blushed and covered his head with the blanket, and everyone started calling, "Mommy, Mommy." At this time, I would like to ask our DAV Chapter 13 if they would come up and place a wreath. If everyone could be seated. Letter 6, the Korean War, 1951. Our squad leader just came by and told us to shave and wash up. What does he think? We all washed up just a week ago. At this time, I'd like to ask VFW Post 824 to retire the colors. Everyone can be seated again, please. Our last letter today, letter 7, is from the Vietnam War, 1971. I would ask a veteran of that conflict if he would read the letter for us. Dave Meredith.
Maybe sometime I'll try to tell you how scared I am now. There's nothing I can do about it but just wait for a day to start and finish.
Dave told me he remembered those moments, the different emotions. If you get a chance, there's a lot of very fine books out and a lot of information on the internet. And if you go through and read the letters from the different conflicts, you find out that in any time over the span of our history, people were pretty much the same. The things they thought about and wrote about don't really change that much. And even in the emails that people get now from troops serving overseas, which are our new letters from war, it's the same thing. I'm sure you got plenty of emails as well as I did, and we've got a current Iraqi war veteran that's serving with VFW today. So I know that those are the new letters, so save them because they mean a lot. In closing, I would like to thank our supervisors in the County of York, Randy in the back, everyone that's helped put the program on, VFW Post 824, Disabled American Veterans Chapter 13 for their wreath, for the beautiful wreath they brought, the York County Historical Committee members for helping put this on, our reenactors. Take a minute to get to talk to them. You hear some real good stories. And we always have a lot of good stories with everyone. And most of all of you that are serving our country now or have served our country in the past. Thank you. And that concludes our program.